You have won every argument this week and you have nothing to show for it. Look at your life. Look at the people who have stopped returning your calls. Look at the promotion that went to someone less qualified. Look at the relationships that ended with you holding a stack of evidence and an empty apartment. You were right every time. You had the facts, you had the logic, you had the receipts, and somehow every victory you won at the level of argument translated into a loss at the level of life. You are the undefeated champion of debates nobody remembers and the consistent loser of outcomes that actually matter. There is a specific kind of man who spends his life collecting verbal victories the way another man collects debts he will never call in. He wins the argument with his wife and sleeps on the couch. He wins the argument with his boss and gets passed over. He wins the argument with his friend and loses the friendship. He walks away from each confrontation with a trophy that cannot be spent, traded, or eaten. And he wonders, in the quiet moments between battles, why being right so often has produced a life that feels so thoroughly wrong. Niccolo Machiavelli watched this pattern repeat itself across 5 centuries of political history, and he diagnosed it with the cold precision of a man who had lost everything by being clever. He had been an advisor to princes, he had written brilliant dispatches, he had argued, analyzed, and articulated with a skill that made him one of the most formidable minds of the Renaissance. And then the Medici returned to power, and he was arrested, tortured, and exiled. His arguments had been correct, his outcomes had been catastrophic, and in the ruined silence of that exile, he understood something that changed the way he saw every human interaction for the rest of his life. Arguments and outcomes are not the same game. They are not played on the same board. They are not won by the same means. And the man who pursues arguments as if they were outcomes will spend his life rich in victories and bankrupt in results. You are here because you are tired. Not tired of losing. Tired of winning and watching the wins evaporate. Tired of being right and feeling miserable. Tired of the slow dawning awareness that something in your approach is fundamentally miscalibrated, even though you cannot quite name what it is. You have felt the shape of this problem without seeing its face. Tonight, we are going to put a face on it. We are going to dismantle the entire argument-winning apparatus you have spent decades building, and we are going to install in its place a different operating system. An outcome-oriented system, a Machiavellian system, one that may require you to lose more arguments than you have ever lost in your life, in exchange for winning more outcomes than you ever thought were available. Understand this first: the desire to win arguments is not a strategic orientation, it is an emotional one. It is rooted in the part of you that was told early and often that being right was the way to earn love, respect, and safety. You were the smart kid. You were the one who corrected the teacher. You were the one who pointed out the flaw in the plan. And somewhere along the way, the correctness became the identity, and the identity became the addiction. Now you chase the dopamine hit of being confirmed right the way another man chases liquor or pornography. You cannot pass an incorrect statement without dismantling it. You cannot let a bad argument stand. You cannot leave a disagreement unresolved. And this compulsion, which feels to you like integrity, looks from the outside like a man being dragged through his own life by a leash he refuses to acknowledge. Machiavelli observed that men who needed to be right were the easiest to manipulate. Offer them a disagreement they could not resist, and they would spend themselves completely trying to win it, while you walked away with everything that actually mattered. The skilled operator in a room does not fight for the verbal high ground. He lets the compulsive arguer have it, because the high ground of an argument is a mountaintop of sand. It crumbles the moment you try to stand on it. And while the compulsive arguer is scrambling to stay upright on that collapsing peak, the operator is down in the valley, quietly acquiring land, allies, resources, and position. When the dust settles, the arguer is still correct, and the operator owns the terrain. Consider what an argument actually is. At the surface, it is a verbal exchange about a point of disagreement. Beneath the surface, it is something entirely different. It is a contest for dominance disguised as a contest for truth. Both parties believe they are fighting about the facts. Neither is. They are fighting about who gets to frame reality for the other, who gets to establish the baseline, who gets to be the authority in this small kingdom of a conversation. And because this is the actual game being played, the man who wins the argument has won only the verbal surface, while the man who has absorbed the loss gracefully may have won something much more valuable. He has won the perception, he has won the observer, he has won the long game, because he has refused to pay the price of winning the short one. The price of winning an argument is almost always higher than the value of the argument itself. This is the calculation you have refused to make for most of your life. You have treated arguments as if they were free, or as if their cost were limited to the 30 minutes of unpleasantness required to win them. In fact, every argument you win carries a long tail of consequences you do not see. The person you defeated does not simply accept the defeat and move on, they store it, they nurse it, they rehearse it, they become over time a quiet enemy, invested in your failure because your success would confirm the correctness of the humiliation they suffered at your hands. You have been manufacturing enemies for years under the guise of pursuing truth, and those enemies have been costing you things you have not even noticed. A promotion that never came because the hiring manager remembered the time you corrected him in a meeting. A client who ghosted because you proved them wrong about something that did not matter. A wife who stopped reaching for you in the dark because every disagreement had a winner and a loser, and she was tired of being the loser. These are the invisible debts of the argument winner. You have been collecting them for years without realizing that the ledger was being kept. And somewhere in the margins of your life, those debts have been called in over and over in forms you never connected back to the arguments that created them. Machiavelli wrote in The Prince that it is necessary for a ruler to know how to do wrong and to make use of it or not according to necessity. What he meant was that the ruler must be liberated from moral reflex, from the compulsive need to do the right thing in order to do the strategic thing. This applies with equal force to the argument. The compulsive arguer is morally reflexive. He cannot let a wrong thing stand because he has tied his self-worth to the correction of wrongness. The Machiavellian operator is liberated from this compulsion. He can let wrong things stand when standing serves him. He can agree with falsehoods when agreement advances his position. He can remain silent in the face of bad logic when silence is more valuable than refutation. He has no ego invested in the argument itself. His ego is invested only in the outcome. And because of this, he can navigate conversations with a flexibility that the compulsive arguer can never match. This does not mean he lies. It means he understands the difference between asserting truth and winning arguments about truth. He can believe something fully, privately, and without compromise, while declining to fight every person who disagrees with it. His internal convictions are not dependent on external validation. He does not need other people to agree with him in order to feel that his beliefs are correct. This is the foundation. Without this internal stability, you cannot release the need to win arguments. You will keep grasping for the external confirmation because your internal ground is too unsteady to support you. The work therefore begins inside. You must build the internal conviction to the point where it no longer needs to be defended, because defended beliefs are weaker, not stronger, than undefended ones. A belief that requires constant verbal warfare to maintain is a belief you do not fully hold. You are arguing to convince yourself, not them. Now consider the mechanics of the outcome-oriented approach. When someone presents you with a position you disagree with, you have several options. The amateur option, the one you have trained yourself into, is to immediately refute, to marshal your facts, to present your counter-argument, to pursue the win. The Machiavellian option is to first ask a different question entirely. What do I actually want to happen as a result of this conversation? Not, what is the correct response to what they just said? But, what outcome am I trying to produce? Once you ask this question, the entire landscape of the conversation reorganizes itself. You are no longer reacting to their words. You are calculating toward a goal, and in that recalculation, you discover that winning the verbal exchange is almost never the optimal path to the goal you actually want. Say your coworker presents an idea in a meeting that is, in your assessment, poorly thought out. The compulsive arguer attacks the idea. He exposes its flaws. He wins the argument. He leaves the meeting feeling sharp and vindicated. What has he actually produced? He has produced a co-worker who now dislikes him, a manager who now views him as combative, a team that now fears his scrutiny, and a work environment in which people will begin to share fewer ideas in his presence, which will reduce his access to the very information he needs to advance his own career. He has won the argument and impoverished his position. The Machiavellian asks a different question. What do I want here? Perhaps he wants the idea modified. Perhaps he wants the co-worker's trust so that he can influence them later. Perhaps he wants the manager to see him as a constructive presence. Perhaps he wants simply to avoid wasting political capital on a fight that will not advance his larger aims. Whatever the outcome he has selected, the path to it almost certainly does not involve humiliating the co-worker in the meeting. It involves something subtler: private conversation, strategic questioning, delayed intervention, or even in some cases, letting the flawed idea play out so that the lesson arrives without your fingerprints on it. This is what Machiavelli meant when he wrote that the wise prince knows when to appear to be what he is not. The compulsive arguer appears to be exactly what he is, every moment, in every conversation. There is no distance between his internal assessment and his external expression. He is maximally readable. He is therefore maximally exploitable. The Machiavellian maintains a gap between what he thinks and what he says. Not because he is dishonest, but because he understands that the unguarded expression of every thought is a form of strategic incontinence. Thoughts are expensive. They should be spent when spending them advances the outcome. They should be retained when retention advances it. The decision about whether to speak a thought aloud is not a moral decision. It is a tactical one. And when you begin to treat every verbal moment as a tactical decision rather than a moral one, the number of arguments you find yourself compelled to win drops dramatically. There is a specific skill here that must be developed. It is the skill of letting something false pass without correcting it. For the compulsive arguer, this feels like a small death every time he practices it. His stomach tightens, his hand twitches toward the intervention. His mouth opens on a reflex he has never inspected. He must deliberately close it. He must allow the wrong thing to stand. He must experience fully the discomfort of a lie existing in the world without his personal intervention to correct it. And he must survive that discomfort. He must notice that the world does not end. He must notice that the false statement, uncorrected, causes far less damage than his correction would have caused. He must notice that the person who made the false statement goes on with their day, and that he too goes on with his, and that nothing of substance has been lost except his opportunity to feel righteous. This practice is not weakness. It is a radical reallocation of energy. Every argument you do not engage is energy retained for pursuits that matter. The compulsive arguer is exhausted at the end of every day because he has fought a dozen small battles that produced nothing. The Machiavellian ends his day with energy remaining because he has fought only the battles that advance his actual goals. He looks from the outside like a calmer man. In fact, he is simply a more efficiently allocated one. His resources are deployed toward outcomes rather than dissipated across arguments. Consider also the relational dimension. In any ongoing relationship, whether romantic, professional, or familial, the accumulation of one arguments creates a specific kind of structural damage. The person on the losing end of a consistent pattern of arguments begins to experience the relationship itself as unsafe. They do not think this consciously. They simply feel it. They feel that opening themselves, expressing themselves, offering their views invites attack. They learn to hold back. They learn to withdraw. They learn to share only the safest, least revealing portions of themselves. The argument winner ends up in a relationship with a diminished version of the other person, a version that has learned, through repeated defeat, to minimize its exposure. And then the argument winner wonders why his relationships feel shallow, why his partner has stopped being the vibrant person she was at the start, why his children have stopped bringing their ideas to him. He has killed the thing he wanted by winning too many arguments about it. Machiavelli understood that power rests on willing contribution far more than on forced compliance. The prince who compels his subjects into submission must expend vast resources maintaining that submission. The prince who earns their willing contribution has their energy working for him at no ongoing cost. In your personal and professional relationships, every argument you win is a small act of compulsion. You have forced the other person to accept your version. They comply, but they do not contribute. They submit, but they do not serve. And the long-term cost of this, accumulated across years, is a life populated by people who have stopped offering you their best because they know their best will only be used as evidence against them. The Machiavellian understands that the most powerful position in any ongoing relationship is the position of the person who makes the other person feel seen, validated, and capable. This is not the same as agreeing with them. It is not the same as flattering them. It is the subtle art of leaving the other person standing upright even when you have by any reasonable measure won the exchange. You can hold your position without crushing theirs. You can maintain your view without annihilating theirs. You can disagree without making the disagreement a referendum on their competence, their intelligence, or their worth. This is a skill. It is not a personality trait. It can be learned. But it can be learned only by someone who has first understood that the crushing of other people is not, in fact, a strategic win, regardless of how satisfying it feels in the moment. Now, there are arguments that must be fought. This is important to say because the outcome-oriented approach is not the same as universal capitulation. Machiavelli was not a pacifist. He advised rulers to use force when force was the correct tool. The distinction is that force must be used deliberately, not reflexively. There are moments when a line must be held, a principle must be defended, a position must be made clear. In those moments, the Machiavellian fights. But he fights having selected the battle consciously, not having been triggered into it. He fights knowing what he stands to gain and what he stands to lose. He fights because the outcome he wants can only be produced by the fight, not because the fight is the first response his nervous system generated. And because he fights rarely and deliberately, when he does fight, his intervention carries a weight that the compulsive arguer's interventions never carry. The man who speaks rarely is listened to carefully. The man who fights rarely is feared seriously. The compulsive arguer, through overuse, has depreciated his own currency. Every argument he wins is worth slightly less than the last because his interventions have become background noise rather than signal. The Machiavellian's interventions remain signal because he has not polluted them with noise. There is also the question of who notices. In every argument, there is not only the two people fighting, there are the observers, the other people in the room, the people who will hear about it later, the people who form impressions based on how you conduct yourself. And here is the quiet truth that the compulsive arguer has never absorbed. Observers do not keep score the way the arguer keeps score. They are not tracking who won the exchange. They are tracking something else entirely. They are tracking character. They are tracking composure. They are tracking maturity. They are tracking who seems like a safe person to work with, to confide in, to promote, to trust. And by these metrics, the argument winner almost always loses. He has demonstrated publicly that he will pursue verbal dominance at the cost of social grace. He has revealed himself as a man who cannot let a small thing go. He has shown the room that he is someone whose ego can be leveraged into combat with minimal provocation. Every observer has noted this, consciously or not, and filed it away. And in all the future decisions those observers make, decisions about who to include, who to elevate, who to partner with, the argument winner will find himself mysteriously passed over, unable to connect his passage over with the series of verbal victories that purchased it. This is the tax of the win. You pay it in installments you cannot see, across years, in the currency of opportunities that never materialize. And because you cannot see the payments, you do not connect them to the arguments that triggered them. You walk through life wondering why doors do not open for you, why people seem less enthusiastic about you than you believe you deserve, why the world resists your obvious competence. The answer is that the world has been quietly adjusting its relationship to you, argument by argument, win by win. It has been demoting you in the hierarchy of people worth investing in. And it has done this not because you are wrong, but because being right in the way you practice it costs more than you can afford. To reverse this, you must develop a discipline that will feel at first like a kind of death. You must practice letting people be wrong in your presence without intervening. You must practice agreeing with statements you find imprecise when precision does not advance your outcome. You must practice nodding while disagreeing. You must practice the strategic smile that acknowledges without endorsing. You must practice saying interesting when you mean nothing of the kind, and meaning by the ambiguity, not an endorsement, but a refusal to engage. Every one of these practices will feel, to the compulsive part of you, like a betrayal of your principles. In fact, it is the opposite. It is the first time in your life that your principles are being protected. because you are ceasing to spend them on transactions that do not pay them back. And over time, something shifts. You notice that you're in more rooms than you used to be in. You notice that people confide in you more often. You notice that you have begun to learn things you would not have learned before because people are telling you things they would not have told an argument winner. You notice that your influence, the quiet kind, is growing even as your verbal intervention is shrinking. You notice that the outcomes you actually want, the promotion, the relationship, the deal, the respect, are arriving more frequently, and they are arriving without the battle scars you used to consider the price of admission. You have begun to live differently, not because your intelligence has increased, but because you have stopped spending your intelligence on verbal battles and started investing it in strategic outcomes. This is what Machiavelli was trying to teach you across 500 years of separation. The intelligent man who cannot resist the argument is a walking weakness disguised as a walking strength. The intelligent man who can resist the argument, who can choose when to engage and when to withhold, who has divorced his self-worth from the verbal victory and married it instead to the achieved outcome, is a force that moves through the world with far more weight than the arguer could ever manage. You have been the first kind for too long. You have the intelligence to become the second. The only thing between you and the transformation is the willingness to let a certain number of incorrect statements die of natural causes, without your personal intervention to execute them. Begin tomorrow. In the first conversation where you feel the pull to correct, to refute, to intervene, pause. Ask yourself the single Machiavellian question: what outcome do I actually want? If the answer is not served by winning the argument, let the argument go, let the false statement stand. Let the flawed logic pass, let the other person have their moment of wrongness. And watch what you have preserved, watch the goodwill that accumulated because you did not strike. Watch the information that came your way because you were not perceived as a threat. Watch the opportunity that opened because you were seen as the composed one, the grown one, the one who could hold his own without needing to hold anyone else's down. Do this every day for a month. Keep a private tally, if you must, of the arguments you declined to fight and the outcomes you achieved because you declined. Do not share the tally with anyone. This is your private transformation. The fact that you are transforming is itself a thing that should not be announced. Machiavelli would tell you that the quiet revolution is the one that succeeds. The announced revolution is the one that gets crushed before it matures. Your shift in approach is a revolution in miniature, conducted inside your own conduct, visible to no one, but producing effects that the world will eventually have to reckon with. Let them reckon with it without ever knowing what you have done. The compulsive arguer inside you will resist this. He will whisper that you are becoming soft, that you are letting the world walk over you, that you are abandoning your principles for a cheap social peace. He is wrong, but you cannot argue with him because he is you, and the argument is his home. You do not defeat him through argument. You defeat him through accumulated evidence. Every outcome you win by not fighting is a piece of evidence. Every promotion, every deepened relationship, every door that opens because you stopped slamming others closed. The evidence accumulates faster than he can dispute it, and eventually he grows quiet. He sees what you have done. He sees the life you have built by declining to pursue the hollow victories he spent so many years chasing. And he retreats into a smaller and smaller corner of your psyche, until one day you realize he has not spoken up in weeks, and you have not missed him. This is the man Machiavelli was writing for. Not the man who argues well, but the man who has stopped needing to argue at all, because his attention has been redirected entirely toward the production of outcomes. His life becomes, over time, something approaching what he always wanted it to be. When he was still in the arguing phase and could not understand why the wanting kept failing to become the having. The wanting became the having when the arguing became the strategy. It is that simple, and it is that hard. If any of this reached a part of you that has been waiting to hear it, subscribe. Not because the algorithm asks. Subscribe because you're done paying the tax of the win and you're ready to start collecting the returns of the outcome.